Welcome back to Pink Chair Therapy once again. Today, I'm really excited about this particular topic because I actually just finished reading your book. Which I probably should
make a plug here.
Yeah, probably should have read years ago. But also, as I was reading it, I realized that you raised me. So a lot of the things that were in here, obviously I didn't know all of it.
Sure, yeah, right.
Because we don't talk about everything.
Right.
But just when I was reading it, there were a couple times that it kind of brought me, not to like guttural tears, but just like little tears in my eyes of just being like so grateful because of all the concepts in this are in you, and you were the person that raised me. And actually, as I...
You're gonna bring me to tears.
I know. But as I talked to my husband about it, and as I talked to one of my girlfriends about it, they both kind of said the same thing when I was just discussing some of the things, and they were like, and I think Jason mentioned it to you today about something. He was like, yeah, but he raised you. You had that. And not everyone has that. So although I know nobody's perfect, nobody's a perfect parent, but the intentionality that you raised me and my siblings with, I'm extremely grateful for. So this book,
I wasn't really expecting that.
Sorry.
No apologies.
This book, which is called Rewriting the Family Script, and was also repackaged later, I think, as adult to adult.
Right.
Which adult to adult, I'm gonna refer to it as adult to adult because I think that's just an easy pertinent.
Right.
It just kind of encapsulates it all. But the book is discussing becoming peers with your parents or becoming adults with your parents and breaking, I don't want to call them bad patterns, but just breaking patterns within the cycle of becoming an adult as a child and becoming an adult as someone else's child and just becoming an adult somehow within that cycle. And the concept that I was most excited about talking about was just the inner child, because it seems to permeate this particular book in understanding yourself as an inner child and understanding your parent as an inner child. And it just, the whole book is just literally every single chapter references the inner child. And I don't know when as an adult I began looking at people as children, or as trying to see their inner child rather than seeing whatever they were doing to me or in front of me. But it's something that's permeated my adulthood. And I don't know if it's something that you taught me or if it's something that I learned somewhere else. I don't know, but it's been a kind of a known concept for me.
Okay.
Of just the inner child, being aware of the inner child. And then and for me, it's been about myself, when I identify anxiety or some weird out of place, this kind of reaction, not overreaction or something that just feels appropriate to me, but in the context of whatever I'm in, it does feel like an overreaction. And so I've been able to identify certain things in myself as a little girl who's scared or trying to prove that she's good enough or certain things. But more helpful than anything, I've been able to see other people that way. When I feel trod upon or hurt in some way by anyone, I can fairly quickly forgive or have grace for, because I can fairly quickly identify that person is hurt or feeling scared or feeling defensive because of anything, and I very quickly attribute it to their childhood. I think that's probably, again, because I was raised by you, and because it's just, I've been raised around those concepts my whole life, I guess.
Sure.
But I realize in being in the world that not everybody has access to that information or awareness. And so, your book is talking a lot about just people reacting from, or all of us reacting from a place of our childhood. And one thing, I don't even know where to start because there's so much. There's so much.
We'll get to it.
I'm going to say one thing, and then I'm going to ask you where to start.
Okay.
Because something you pointed out early on in this book is that we all have inner children. And an interesting thing I thought you said was that nobody can really point out where that ends. Like for myself,
Yeah.
I have a conceptualization of my inner child. I know what she looks like. I've seen pictures. Obviously, I don't remember myself at that age, but like,
Yeah.
I have a conceptualization of my inner child. But when I think about the span of my life, there's nowhere where she goes away. Like, there's no point in which I was like, I became an adult, or I stopped being a child, or whatever.
Right.
That person is still me. That little girl is still me. There's no start or end.
Right.
I never became an adult, but I did.
Yeah.
But I can't point where it happened.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Anyway, so I just thought that was interesting that, like, everybody knows, quote unquote. It's a phrase that's used a lot.
Yeah.
Your inner child.
The inner child.
Oh,
yes.
my inner child. So can you give us, like, maybe not quick, but like a brief explanation of just what is the inner child? It's an overused term.
Yeah.
So what is that?
Okay. Well, that's great. I would start by looking at, we have done a number of episodes now on the family of origin, all these little components, rules, roles, birth order, those things. Those are the components of what we call the inner child.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And so the inner child is a part of us that is lodged in our emotions, all of which were affected by all the things that we've been talking about in the last few episodes. And so that inner child, the rule of thumb is that we repeat familiar patterns in our lives because they're familiar. Not because they work, not because they're good, but because
we know them.
Yeah, when we talked about family mobile, it's the equilibrium that we keep moving back towards, okay? And so in my child, I learned all kinds of things that affect me emotionally. And so the inner child is a part of me that is reactive to emotions that are old.
Okay.
Okay? Now, there's the mature adult in us that we are more mature some days than others, but so mature might be a real generous term.
Depends on how much sleep we get.
Exactly right. Yeah. But it's that part of me that is responding to a set of values that I've chosen, or a perspective that I carry, etc. It's as we say, it's our left brain. It's that thinking, logical part of us that we have learned to apply. But that little child is always there, and then we have these terms like baggage. We repeat these patterns that are bagged. Oh, I do that because my mom did this, or dad did this, or this happened to me.
Yeah.
And so the term we use for baggage. Well, baggage is a reactivity to emotions that aren't current, that are past, okay? That's baggage. And I have these triggers, and triggers are words we use for what stimulates those feelings that are old. And so someone says something that's just like my mom used to say when she was scolding me. And so my stomach gets tight and I have this emotional reaction, but I'm not being scolded by my mom. That's the inner child. It's not good or bad, and it is universal, but often we aren't aware of it, or we don't. I think certainly today our culture is much more aware of the inner child because of books that are written, etc. But 30, 40 years ago, the term originated with a book by Hugh Messeldine. I bet you it was published in 76, called Your Inner Child of the Past. That's where the phrase came from, okay? And so since then, we've been growing as a culture to this awareness you're describing today. And so I would say that the definition would be that part of me that reacts to the past because of feelings that are stimulated in me, not necessarily because of my values, and not necessarily because of what's going on around me. What's going on around me may form a trigger that stimulates this feeling.
Yeah, okay.
Now, the danger is, or the trouble with the inner child is, if we're not aware of the existence of that inner child, or if we don't know that child well, then it can create chaos, because I have these impulsive reactions that I may look back on later and say, why did I do that? Or I really wish I hadn't done that, or whatever. It's a violation of my values. I said something to this person that I really would never want to say. That's the inner child. And the inner child typically is triggered by fear, hurt, anxiety, insecurity, those things, typically things we would call negative emotions. That behavior that comes as a result of it is how we identify the inner child. And so when you say, I've learned to view people that offend me, who do inappropriate things, through that perspective, oh, that's an inner child. That is very empathic. We'd say, oh, that's good. Right? You work on that's worth doing. Hopefully, as a result of that perspective, chicken and the egg, maybe before or after, you have this awareness of your own inner child that you now can gracefully apply to other people. That's the mature adult, because they're aware of the inner child, because the child didn't go away.
Yeah,
it gets managed, led by the mature adult.
Okay.
And when the mature adult is not in charge, we call that impulsivity. That I'm just reacting to what I'm feeling.
Okay, I have a question about just the relationship between our what you would call mature adult versus a reactive inner child.
Right.
Because this is a conversation I've had quite a bit recently with my new husband, who we talk about the inner child quite a bit, and something we've talked about is just we'll talk through why we do something. Oh, I did this because I felt hurt or rejected or, something.
Right.
And he's said quite a few times, no, but I know that this is not currently true.
He's talking about his own
feeling,
emotion,
talk about
reaction.
His own feeling of I know I overreacted here, and I know I don't need to feel that way because XYZ that's currently true. Yeah. And we've kind of, again, talked through it a few times of but that doesn't make that feeling go away. You can cognitively, the mature adult in you who's experienced 37 years of life can know cognitively that I'm not in danger right now.
Right.
But that feeling is still in your chest.
Right.
Of I feel like I'm in danger.
Right.
If you become aware of your inner child, does that ever go away? Or will that always be there and you just have to mature adult process?
That's a great question. That's a dilemma of psychotherapy. All right. And so here's the briefest, most concise answer I can give to that is it can go away, but extremely slowly. And it doesn't just evaporate. So as I'm paying attention to my mature adult, if we call it that, reflecting on that inner child learns from that mature adult. This is a very nebulous way to describe this. I almost sound spooky, but that's not what we're not talking about ghosts or demons or something.
I mean, psychology is invisible.
Exactly.
So.
It's kind of magic, But it is that. Okay, like what Jason's saying is, okay, I'm differentiating between what I feel and what I know. All right, that's the start of hundreds of conversations that eventually will lead to that emotional reaction catching up to what I know cognitively. But it comes through great effort and long periods of time. And the more critical we are of that inner child, the slower that process is. Right, just being able to accept the fact that, I know that little guy, and he's reacting, and so, no, here's where I'm going to react. And so I make choices about my behavior based on my mature adult that is validating and acknowledging that inner child, so that I'm not putting shame on top of shame, you know, because most of the triggers are shame-based, you know, usually as I'm scared of being exposed, or I don't want people to know, or whatever, all shame. And so as we mature, if what we are doing is addressing that reactivity, not because it's bad or wicked or crazy, but because, oh, that doesn't work well. And so that's the quickest answer I give you, is we grow.
Okay.
And that inner child can grow also. They're not stuck. But I'm tempted to say none of us totally grow up 100% in this lifetime. You know, gosh, I watched my parents, and they were good parents, and they weren't crazy. And Dad was 90 when he passed away. Mom was 97. Oh, there were still little inner child children in there.
Maybe in there, yeah.
Yeah, there were, yeah. And they weren't grossly inappropriate or anything, but no, I could definitely see, oh, that's interesting. So I don't think we are ever totally out of that inner child.
Okay.
And I'm thinking that's good, because part of that inner child is also playful, is also relaxed, is also spontaneous. And so those things that we had as children, you and I have talked about, we're both mascots. We grew up last born kids, and we are playful. And that inner child, I think, sometimes even on these episodes, the inner child in each of us comes out to play, and we have this little banter. Well, we don't want to lose that. You know, that's not something we want to correct. But it's the mature adult who is making decisions based on their values, not on their impulse, as to, all right, what's good and what isn't? What will I allow? What am I going to regret later that I don't want to do now? And that's a growing process.
As you were talking, I was thinking about, like, just experiencing myself and my own inner child, and, like, in certain interactions, I've become fairly better at, not good, but better at.
This is a gracious, mature parent in there, yeah.
Like, not reacting emotionally to things, which maybe some people might call it bottling emotions. Some people, I don't know. But for me, like, when I feel that fire in my chest, you know, that like really fire that just makes you want to scream.
Yeah,
like that's just like, you're hurting me. Leave me alone. Like something like that. Like, you know, just having like real, very strong emotional responses that I can feel in the moment. I know that they're there. My face probably gets red. You know, like I'm reacting to. I cannot turn that off. But in my current state of this body and being, I have the ability to not react in that moment. You know, I will try to process it and deal with it more rationally.
Let's real quick talk about that.
Okay.
Because I don't want to slip by. It was
great.
golden. You just laid stuff on the table for me. Okay, so you want to scream, you're hurting me.
Yeah.
All right, but that mature adult says, well, that would really look bad. Okay, so instead, through practice and, you know, introspection, what I say is, you know what, I'm getting really defensive right now. And I don't want to react poorly, so I'm going to end this conversation. I'm going to go for a walk. I'll be back in 20 minutes. I want to continue this conversation, but there's just too much going on inside me, and I don't want to react poorly. Now, if you, the inner child in you, says, no, don't leave me. You're not leaving this conversation. Okay, that now... No, I wasn't asking permission. I was just letting you know. That's what I'm doing to preserve this conversation and this relationship. So I am going to go, you know. And so hopefully you'll be here when I get back. And it'll be about 10 minutes. Now, that is a war between the inner child in me and the mature adult. And the inner child wants to yell, and certainly yell back at you. Who do you think you are telling me what to do? That kind of thing. Rather than... But you would get to that place through great efforts over long periods of time that you can, it's not stuffing. I'm not pretending I'm not feeling it, but I'm putting it on the table as just a fact. And then I'm letting you know how I'm going to manage that emotion, which is different than the inner child. But that's what I'm thinking. That's what that maturity, if we call it that, looks like, of, okay, that mature adult through great effort comes to a place where they are predominant over that impulse, I want to just slap your face, but instead I'm going to tell you I'm defensive, I'm going for a walk, you know.
And then come back and talk about it.
And then come back and talk about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's the part that I think sometimes I fear that I stuff things down, but that's, I think, something that also, as like a bit of a conflict avoidant person, like that's something I also really intentionally work at, is like when you have to come back to it. You can't just walk away and like shove that little kid down.
Right.
You have to actually be like, no, this actually really hurt me.
Right.
It might have been a little irrational, but here's why, and here's like, and then just navigate the conflict or the conversation rather than just saying, I don't want to talk about it, and then never coming back to it. Or whatever. There has to be.
And always in the danger zone with that maturity is the other person might say, well, you're just mentally ill. You know, that's because you're crazy. That's because you're stupid. And they come back with this shame. And that's where that skill of being able to say, wow, that inner child is really frightened. You know, oh my gosh, you sound really, really scared. Now that can come across as an accusation. So if I just do it internally, just saying, I don't have to react to that because that child just experienced abandonment when I walked away. And I can't take responsibility for that. I can only take responsibility. Did I say it well? Did I do what I said I was going to do? Am I trying to re-enter the conversation? Okay, check. Those are mature things. I don't feel mature. And certainly when they tell me I'm mentally ill, I don't feel good about it. But I know intellectually, through great efforts and long periods of time, that's a frightened child who is trying to be a bully to get their way or to shut me up. But they are feeling mentally ill right now. That kind of thing.
Just give them some space. Maybe.
Yes. Yeah, right. Maybe. And they didn't want space. You gave them space when you went for a walk. Well, we'll see how that works.
Okay. So I think we've kind of already answered this question, but I just want to make sure I ask it. But how, like, identifying your own, do you have like a quick, easy tip to identify your own inner child?
Probably not.
Okay.
But I got a great example.
Okay.
All right? This is my inner child. All right? And I think we've talked about this. Is it fair to say, now this is Roger interpreting Roger, at least the adult. Is it fair to say that the vast majority of times I am on time? When I make an appointment, I'm there, I'm on time.
I mean, I've never been your doctor, so I don't know.
Right.
But I think I don't have any conceptualization of you as being late, ever.
Okay, so that's good. That verifies my perception, but that has come through effort. That's not, I wasn't always that way, okay? But what you may not realize, and maybe you do, I'm almost always on time, but I'm always in a hurry, all right? Now that's an inner war for me, all right? And there was this incident, and I would say within the last 3 years, so this is fairly new, all right? I'm driving, and I'm by myself. And so when I'm by myself in the car, I'll talk to myself and I'll talk out loud. I'm an auditory learner, and it helps me when I verbalize things, I process things, all right? And I'm driving, and I'm looking at the clock, you know, and I'm afraid I'm going to be late, all right? And so out loud, I yell, you know, there's red lights and, you know, traffic, etc. This is what I said to myself. I hate this. Just like that. I hate this. But helpfully, gladly that I said it out loud, because then I said, what am I talking about? I did this. I chose when I left that house. I chose what I was going to do in those last 10 minutes. I set this up. I also know I'm not going to be late. I got enough margin, but I have this. And so then I started processing, again, all out loud. This is probably the last 15 minutes before I get to the office, that kind of thing. And wait a minute, why do I do this? Now, this is starting to address that inner child. I convince myself that whatever it is I'm about to do is of earth-shattering importance. It would be awful if I was late. I can't be late because the world is depending on me. Now, literally, I'm saying this to the inner child because it's absolute nonsense. From beginning to end, that is absolute nonsense. It's also very true. that inner child needs to hear this. I'm not thinking quite that
Yeah.
specifically, but it's true. What's going to happen if I'm late? If I'm going to be late, I'm going to be 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Why is that so important? Hard to put my finger on it, but it's pretty arrogant. It is pretty grandiose that it's so terrible if I'm late. And that began to calm me down, and it began to shift that perspective that I was reacting to when I said, I hate this, when realistically, if I hated it, I wouldn't be doing it. I procrastinated just enough, not that I was going to be late, but that I would be frustrated. And that frustration, I think, was the inner child saying, I am really important. And I ain't that important. Nothing bad's going to happen. And so that's this war. That's one example of that war within me where I happen to be really aware in that time that, oh yeah, that's, something is off here. Because I'm not typically late, but I have this emotional reaction. But if something was sitting in the car, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't yell at myself. I wouldn't have that dialogue, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But that's what I'm picturing, at least for me, that's an example of that war between the mature adult that's managing well, and that inner child that needs some kind of affirmation or some kind of value, which says, oh, that little child is still a junior high school kid who's being told, no, that's not right. No, you better be on time. Oh, no, that's terrible if you're That's taken care of. I've done that for years. But that inner child is still there.
Yeah.
Doesn't take too much to trigger it.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
I think so, yeah. I'm wondering, are there other examples of, like for myself, identifying when my inner child is coming out? We'd have to probably ask my husband about this, but I think I've gotten pretty good at, like, my behavior doesn't reflect an overreaction per se.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'd be able to identify it from my, like, physical overreaction, but I can feel it.
Yes.
In my body of, like,
right.
If my reaction is disproportionate to what's happening in the room.
Your emotional reaction, not necessarily behavior.
Yeah, not necessarily my behavior.
Yes,
I'm sure
right.
when I was younger, I could very easily identify my behavior as being disproportional to whatever was going on or whatever offense happened or even if it was minor. But now, so my behavior is different because I have matured, I guess.
You've been working on this.
I'm trying. But my emotional reaction still feels disproportionate to me. So for me, is that like a easy, quote unquote, like way to identify some part of the inner child is like some sort of what I don't want to call it an overreaction because I don't think it's necessarily an overreaction, but maybe what feels like a disproportionate reaction to something.
Well, so when you say it feels like a disproportionate reaction, I think what I hear you saying is I am judging, I'm making a judgment that I think this is an overreaction. So there's a big difference, We'll talk about that in another episode. If I say it feels like, then whatever I'm about to say is not a feeling. That's not going to be a feeling. I feel like it's disproportionate. That's not a feeling. I believe it's disproportionate. My perception is it's disproportionate. Very different.
Okay.
If I'm going to talk about a feeling, when I say I feel, the next word isn't like, think, kind of, whatever. The next word is a descriptive term. I feel angry, I feel sad, I feel happy, I feel scared. That's important because if I'm confusing something I believe for something I feel, there is no resolution in sight. I need to separate those. Feelings are neutral. They are value-free. If I'm hurt, I'm hurt. I can't not be hurt. Mm-hmm. But if I believe you've attacked me, that's different. I will do something with that. I punch you in the face. Now, I may regret that later, but I didn't feel like punching you in the face. I punched you in the face. Okay. Do you see what I'm saying? And so that's what I think it is. When you say disproportionate, then that mature adult is making a judgment, correct or incorrect. Oh, I think that's an overreaction. Well, then let's stay on that track, let's say, of the mature adult. Why do I think it's, I don't know that we do it. You could. It could take a long time. Why would I say that's disproportionate? Well, because so and so just said this, and I know them well enough that that's not what they typically do. Say, and so I'm calming something down in me, not because I feel better, but because my perspective is what I'm allowing to dominate. That's that mature adult versus that impulsive child. The impulsive child, if it's disproportionate, they're reacting to something that's similar to this in my past. So if I'm going to understand in that moment, why am I doing that? When have I felt this before? What pictures come into my mind when I have this feeling?
But how often do you actually have, can you point at that? Because there are so many things, ways that I overreact to, or whatever, believe something.
Right.
And I can't pull up a memory with you or mom or somebody in my childhood that can directly correlate to, oh, this is why I feel this way. I can't pull up.
I would suggest that what you're saying is true, but that's a learned skill. I would suggest, not 100%.
Is what's a learned skill?
To be able to pull up a picture that's associated with a feeling. I'm not used to pulling up pictures with feelings, but I'm reacting to something. And so I'm thinking, that's a learned skill, and skills are acquired slowly. And so then don't give up just because I can't pull up a memory. Think about it later. When have I felt that way? When's the last time I reacted that way? How have I? Because now you're getting to know that inner child, my phraseology of getting to know that inner child, so that you can look at themes and patterns at those feelings. There may be ways you can facilitate that if you have close friends. Say, well, this is what I said, this is what I did. When have I done that before? Have you ever seen that in me? Is that something I'm aware of that was in my childhood or whatever? But I think example would be if when I was growing up, anytime my parents were frustrated, they would say, "What's wrong with you?" Okay, now I have this shame, this trigger in there. Man, I just hurt me so badly, And now someone says, let's say, for instance, "What's wrong with you?" Oh, I have this, but I know this person. They're not shaming me. They're not. They are curious. They're trying to, or they're frustrated or whatever. But that trigger in me, I respond to them the way I respond to my parents. Maybe I shut down, maybe I walk away, maybe I blow up, whatever. But that's where I begin to assess and get to know that young child, that, they're really sensitized to being shamed about their intelligence or whatever. Now I can begin anticipating, soothing, helping that child grow up so that eventually I won't have that same reaction emotionally.
Yeah.
But that's going to be very slow.
Okay.
It's much more quickly I can have a different behavioral reaction, because behaviors are much easier to change than emotions.
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And I very recently, in the past year, because I started going to therapy before I got married this past year. Yeah. And I did EMDR from some sexual trauma in the past. That was my goal. Yeah. Was the specific sexual trauma that happened later in life. Yeah. But my therapist, who was amazing, she started me in childhood, which I was not expecting. But there was a period of time, because like I said, I've conceptualized my own inner child for years. It's something that I've thought about, that I've used, but I don't know. I don't know what the evolution of my understanding of my inner child has been, because up until this past year it was very cognitive. It was very just I know I have an inner child and I know she's hurt by this and blah blah blah. But during my EMDR therapy, there were a few times where I had to go back to childhood and process through a few memories that I do remember them, and I don't remember them as traumatic. I don't remember them as traumatic. Yeah. But she would tell me, this shaped something in you. If you remember that vividly, we need to process through it until whatever comes out of it. But anyway, I really had to go back to my childhood And anybody who's, not everybody's gonna be able to do EMDR or gonna
Sure.
want to do EMDR,
Right.
but it was just very vivid. And there was one memory in particular. I think it took me probably 3 weeks of sessions to work through.
Yeah.
And finally, in the last session, I saw myself. I interacted with myself. Like I went back into that moment, and pulled her out of it. And ever since then, it's become a much more, I don't know what more it is. It's just become something very different. Because before that interaction through EMDR and like really just kind of going into my subconscious, because now I feel like I can visualize those things more. Like I can kind of go back and pull memories. I can a lot more quickly be like, oh, I see where that came from. Like even something like with like growing up with you as a dad or mom as a mom, like I can go back there much differently or more vividly or something.
Yeah.
But before this past year, even though I was very familiar with my inner child and used that a lot for myself, and I had behaviorally changed certain things in my reactions to like having the inner child, I just only recently kind of, I don't know if I would say developed that, but like developed that ability to kind of pull things forth.
And so I think I hear you saying, given all that in the EMDR, etc., that there was this skill that you practiced and learned, and it didn't come automatically.
Right.
But somewhere along the line, it got generalized to some degree, where now you have a different perspective on whether it's just those experiences or recalling things in general. But there is a skill you developed, I guess. I don't know if that's
so.
the
Yeah,
right
I don't know if I
word
call it
for
skill, but
right.
like an ability maybe.
Ability, yeah, right.
Or something like
something.
that. Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is, oh no, it is something that is learned, but it's not passive. It doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
It happens because that grown-up in me says, I got to deal with this, and I find a way, whether it's finding a therapist or focusing on something or reading a book or doing something that, okay, I am going to tackle this. It always helps when we have a frame of reference that says this is going to take a while.
That's what I was going to say, is like for me, and nobody's the same, but for me it took like a long time.
Yeah, right.
Like a long time.
Yeah.
A lot of therapy. Like a lot of intentionality.
Right.
You know, it wasn't like, oh, go to therapy for 3 weeks and it's done. It was like, no, that was the third week of like that was week 3 of a 7-month process of 7 months of therapy on top of 30 years of being raised with a therapist, on top of I don't know how many therapists I've been throughout my life.
Sure.
I mean, not a bazillion, but you know, quite a few rounds of therapy for different issues. Yeah, it's been like a lot. So it wasn't.
A lot
passive.
is always relative, but no, we'll take it from there.
It wasn't passive. It wasn't like a ding.
So, in my quick frame of reference, okay, given what you just described, which I'm thinking is very, very well said, I can change my behavior tomorrow. We call it self-discipline. I won't do that again, all right? So if I have this habit of doing this thing, I'm going to stop it. Yeah, maybe for a weekend. Do you follow me? That self-discipline doesn't create life change. It may open the path, it may be the start, but I will never say that again. All right, well, next week I get triggered, same thing happens again. All right?
Yeah.
Now, if I'm going to change my emotions, if I'm scared of something today, I'm going to be scared of it tomorrow, more than likely. I can decide I'm not going to yell at someone when I'm scared, all right, and that might work for a little bit. But dealing with that emotion is going to take maybe a year from now. If I'm really working on it, I will feel differently around that trigger, and that's what you're describing. But the behavior is a whole different ballgame, but the behavior change isn't life change. My life change comes because something in my perspective changes, i.e., oh, I can see that little child. Oh, I can see what that child needs, etc. And then my emotions are the slowest part of me to change. But that's what you're describing. And it takes a long time. It does. But behavior change, no, I can do that just by slapping myself in the face every time I just have a friend punch me whenever I do this. Okay, yeah. But that's not life change.
Yeah.
But so that's that part of that adult who is making behavior changes, that I'm not going to do that again. And then that they are addressing that scared inner child, so that child can begin being more courageous, because the mature adult in us can handle this for a little while until that little child begins to grow up.
Yeah.
Somewhere the metaphor begins to break down, but I think we're still on it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question for you that I don't know if it'll be interesting or helpful or not, but for you personally, were you aware of your own inner child when you were raising me?
Oh, yes.
Were you, like, how were you interacting with your inner child as a parent? That's like a very big question.
It is a big question. It's a great question. I guess my pause is, all right, how aware am I of what you're asking me to be aware of? I had the concept of inner child. I certainly knew a lot about my reactivity, and things that I was afraid of, and things that created anxiety in me. Was your question, how did I change that? Or
the initial question, let's make, how did you identify it as a parent?
Oh.
When, like, was there a moment or a few moments or something that you can recollect that was like, as a parent, because this book is written about, like, it's written to adult children,
right,
in learning to interact with their parents' inner child.
Right.
Now, I was raised by the man who wrote this book.
Right.
And so presumably you were aware of your inner child, but like you said, we're basically all our inner child until we die. So I'm just wondering, how did you just know, or were there moments when you identified it, or were there moments when you were like, oh my gosh, I'm acting this way with my children because of this little part of my inner child? Like, how
That's a great question,
active
Becca.
was your relationship with your inner child when you were, I mean, you are still raising us, but when you were raising us, you know?
Yeah. Here's the best I can do in terms of this progression of awareness. All right. So I grew up in a family that emotional expression was pretty flat. Not pathologically, but this is a Scandinavian family. My folks immigrated from Sweden. They just, at least in their era, they didn't do feelings. They didn't have words for it. It just wasn't. So that's what I grew up with, all right? And so part of that process for me, when I left home and got into psychology and relationships, etc., was, and sometime we can talk about the specific place that started, but I began becoming aware of my emotions, just aware of them. I wasn't aware of them before that. And I became aware of, what is my body experiencing and what label do I give this? And that was a process. It was a learning process, and it started at a moment in time, but it was, and now once I could do that, then I could identify this, and then I could compare it to my environment, and then I could begin seeing what you were talking about earlier, this perception that this is an overreaction. This feeling that I have, this fear, this hurt, this whatever I'm going to call it, is it merited by what's going on here? And that was a big step towards that inner child. And in our vocabulary right now, it's okay, that was that mature adult paying attention to that inner child and saying, well, it's okay to feel that, but where's it coming from? What's it doing here now? And that, I certainly was aware of that when any of you kids, you were not the biggest trigger in our house for me. but when I was triggered, that was my process of, I am feeling really helpless right now, and this child is, I am believing that I should be able to control something that I can't control. if I'm going to be a good parent, this is a dialogue. It's if I'm going to be a good parent, I can't just shut this kid up. That's not healthy for any of us. I can't just, knock them around. So, but I am a helpless child right now. I didn't always phrase it that way, but I'm aware of, what is this feeling? Oh, this is helplessness. And I have these tools for dealing with helplessness. And in my child, it would be shutting up, avoiding, walking away, or some kind of passive aggressive, I'll get my way type of thing. None of which is particularly productive in adulthood. And so this is my closest, shortest answer to a very complex question. No, it's a perfect question. That coming to that conclusion that, I can control this. I can control me. And so here's this child who is being defiant. This triggers this helplessness in me, but this isn't helpless. Maybe I need to develop a new skill. Maybe I need to apply a skill. More than likely, I need to calm down first and then come back and then apply this skill. But I address the helplessness, which in my younger days, I didn't know how to identify it. I didn't have that word for a feeling. And so that's where, what was I aware of? Well, I became aware of that process. And in that process, I became aware of separating this feeling from what's going on right now. But it comes from a time in my life when I was very helpless all the time. And I learned poor skills to manage that helplessness. I got in trouble a lot as a kid. I think you know some stories. But that was all about defiance, that I am not going to be helpless. And here's me as a dad. 3-year-old makes me helpless? No. This is my deal, not theirs. Right.
Okay, cool.
So I don't know if that's a helpful answer.
That is helpful.
But it does come back when we're talking about that pairing of two parts of our personality, of who we are. We all have them. They are both there. They will always be both there. Can my lifestyle, my responses be more based as a response on that value system that my mature adult carries, as opposed to these emotions that my inner child carries, and helping that inner child to become mature so that what they experience is consistent with the value system. And it's slow. A lifetime. Pretty much.
Well, good thing.
Right.
Good thing we have that.
Right.
Okay, cool. I have one more question, but before I ask that question, because it is, I think it's my final question. Is there anything about the inner child that we haven't covered yet that you want to cover?
Nothing immediately comes to mind.
Great.
And if it does, we could integrate it into other episodes.
Okay, great. So then this question, which we very briefly talked about before we started filming, because my husband asked it, because like I said earlier, he and I have been talking a lot about inner children in relation to us and our new relationship, in relation to us and our adult parents' relationships, all four of you guys, in our relationship to our friends here, and it's just in relation to everyone. We've been talking about inner children a lot. And he asked at some point, because sometimes it does come across this way, but because to me, when I'm talking about other people as inner children, for me, it's giving me and giving us context to interact with people more graciously. Because for me, seeing someone's inner child or trying to conceptualize somebody's inner child gives me more patience with them. It gives me more grace with them. Same with myself. It gives me more patience with myself. It gives me more grace for myself in any given moment. But the question he asked was, is that demeaning? When we're looking at other people as inner children, because for him it did feel demeaning, just looking at everybody as kids.
Right.
Can that be demeaning? Is it I don't know, is there a danger in viewing people as inner children? Becoming kind of this holier than thou, haughty, I'm aware and you're not type of mindset, which I have not seen it that way. But I can see it that way now.
Right.
Now that he's asked that. It
Yeah.
honestly just kind of never crossed my mind because to me, again, it just gave me a context of patience, rather, because I have more
Right.
patience for children
Right.
than I do grown-ass adults.
Right.
So
Yes.
for me,
Right.
I'm
Right.
like, if I'm pissed at somebody,
Right.
it's so much easier to be like, okay, like I get it, okay, instead of just being like, you should know, blah
Yeah,
blah blah.
right. This is great, although it's probably worth an episode by itself.
Yeah.
Because if we take away the word demeaning, belittling,
Mm-hmm.
condescending,
Mm-hmm.
these are all descriptions of behaviors, okay? And I think what Jason was asking was multifaceted. One was about behavior, but one was just about your attitude towards these other people. Is it condescending to think about someone this way?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't say it, okay? Now, when you describe, so we have talked about the inner child as being universal.
Yes.
Nobody doesn't have an inner child.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in one sense, internally, if I really buy that, that's really what I'm approaching on, it's hard to be condescending internally.
Mm-hmm.
Do you follow me?
Mm-hmm.
That, oh no, that's me. I'm an inner child. You're an inner child.
Yeah.
I am trying to empathize with that inner child, even though their outside behavior is really inappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But if what's going on inside me is, I know and you don't,
Mm-hmm.
that's an inner child.
Right.
That's an inner child is feeling insecure,
Yeah.
unrecognized,
Yeah.
and then we call that grandiose, and
Yeah.
that's condescending.
Mm-hmm.
But that is different than what we're talking about here. So the answer to Jason's question is, well, yes and no.
Yeah.
It can be.
Mm-hmm.
I can monitor my behavior, the adult in me. That's good, so I'm not acting condescending. Now I need to introspect and say, am I looking down on
Mm-hmm.
them? That's my deal.
Mm-hmm.
Then yes, I am treating, my behavior might be appropriate. I need to deal with that inner world. If it's condescending, it's an insecure inner child, because my mature adult knows we're all like this. This person's not worse than me.
Right.
And so that's back to that war of I have to be willing and able to introspect to see, am I viewing them as inferior to me?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'd say that's insecurity that you need to be aware of and work on, even though you done good by not saying it to them. Do you follow me? Okay, check that box.
Yeah, okay.
But that's not going to last for a lifetime. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
They push the right button next weekend. Now you tell them, oh, now we're back to that. It really is about introspection, helping that inner child grow.
Yeah. Okay, I can see. I could see that now, because I can see that in myself.
Yeah.
Like
right.
I can see that especially in our conversations about other people.
Yeah.
Like I could see myself, like my insecure inner child.
Yeah.
Coming out. Not. I don't know. It probably depends, because he and I talk the most candidly.
Yeah.
Like I'm the
Right.
most candid with him.
Sure.
So I
sure.
probably I can definitely go.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
go there.
And because you guys talk about it, it can be addressed as my inner child.
Right.
You know what? I must be feeling very insecure right now,
yeah.
because I am talking about this third party as though they are not as smart as I
Right,
am.
yeah.
And that is an insecure inner child. And the two of you can talk about it without even having to address it to the other person.
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And that's how we help that inner child grow.
Mhm.
It's through those kind of dialogues and introspection.
Mhm.
Because again, back to kind of where I began, the mature adult in me has a value system that I have chosen, that I believe. It's a character, it's convictions, those kind of things.
Mhm.
Do I live commensurately with them? Is that consistent in my life? To the degree that it's not, then that inner child and their fear and hurt and insecurity is overpowering that value system.
Mhm.
And that's where I need to, one, empathize with the child, okay? And then be able to address the fact that I'm not going to live like that, because that's something from long ago. That's not what's happening right now. Whew, a lot
That's
of material.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
That's great, because I've been wanting to talk about this more for a
Ever
long
since
time.
you grew up.
For my whole life.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking these things will trickle up and out and into other episodes because it is very, it's just a very basic principle that runs through almost every thought I have, every relationship I have. It's
I think
just,
we've talked about it so much recently, and then reading this book and it
Yeah.
just permeating the entire thing.
Yeah.
And it does kind of say, I said this earlier, and I don't know if it's like too broad of a statement, but I feel like the inner child is kind of the bedrock of psychology.
Yeah.
Like the inner child, it's kind of where everything comes from. Like if you understand your inner child, or you understand the inner child, isn't that kind of where everything starts?
That's 12 sessions for us just answering that question, because it's so much more complex than that. But it's certainly, obviously, I wrote the book that it is certainly a big part of the principle of me conceptualizing who we are as adults.
Yeah.
And it's a nice concept because it's playful. All of us can identify with it. We all have feelings about it, and so I'm thinking the metaphor of an inner child is a very functional picture that we can identify with.
Okay, that's a more rational way to say it.
Yeah, but inner child is so fun. We could just play with that.
Yeah.
But so that's why I'm thinking, it's a little more complex than that, but it is a very significant principle.
Yeah. It makes a lot. Yeah. It just makes a lot of concepts easy to grasp.
Exactly. It's a great metaphor.
Yeah.
Kind of like when we're talking family of origin. Oh, they're all pieces of this. They're all little nuggets of it. But it's a metaphor, kind of like the family mobile. It's a metaphor. It's very helpful. And it's a way to summarize a lot of material, but it isn't a magic answer to everything, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it touches every one of us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad we got this done.
I am too. That was great.
That was good. Yeah.
Okay.
On to the next.
On to the next one. See you next time.
We'll see you next time.